Guten Nachmittag, Maple-Klasse. Heute ist 20. Januar 2021. So today it's our German lesson. It's Wednesday, the 20th of January 2021. It's really lovely to do another German lesson for you this afternoon, and it's going to be following on from what we were doing in our last lesson last week. So just before we get started, as I said last week, just make sure that you can hear me with what I'm saying on your tablet or phone or laptop, whatever it might be. Make sure you've got somewhere quiet to work, and you've got a paper and a pen or something handy to jot some things down as we're going as well. So like last time, I'm going to be sharing some things on the screen with you, so please just bear with me as I go between the different screens, etc. And then we'll go through the lesson, and I'm going to leave you with a task like I did last week, and that's where we're going to start this week, is looking at last week's work and some of the things that you sent in. So please just bear with me. I'm going to share with you my first screen. Okay, so okay, you should be able to see on my screen. I've put today's date, Mittwoch, den 20. Januar 2021. So we know it's Wednesday, the 20th of January, and today, like we were doing last week, we're continuing with learning the names of basic colours and revising those, and knowing the names for basic shapes as well. And if you remember, we were looking at the picture last week. So my task first of all last week was for you to send me a picture, and some of you did, or however you chose to do it, of the following shapes that were correctly coloured. Now, I didn't give you these bits that are here, I just gave you this little list, and we're just going to have a quick talk about it. Now, you're going to have to accept my apologies as well, because some of the shapes that I've drawn with what I've got available on the computer is the closest that I could get to it, so they're not 100% accurate, and some of your pictures drawings were a lot better. So the first one, ein roter Kreis, a red circle, so that you should have drawn me a red circle. Zwei grüne Dreiecke, okay, and that is zwei, two green triangles, so two green triangles. Ein Quadrat, das dunkelblau ist, so a square that is dark blue. That's the closest to a dark blue I can get on here. And then we've got vier bunte oval, so four multicolored or colorful bright ovals. Now I can't do multicolored on here, so I have given you multicolored ones because I've got four different colored ones there. So however you chose to do those, as long as they were different colors or a combination of colors. Ein hellrosa Rechteck, okay, ein hellrosa Rechteck, and that is a light pink or a light pink rectangle, and again that's the closest that I could get just on here, so it would have been a light pink. Ein dunkelgrünes Quadrat, ein dunkelgrünes Quadrat, which would be a dark square. Unfortunately, I don't have a dark green, but it should have been a green of some sort. So my challenge was for some of you to write out names of each shape and phrases, which you did, and also just for those of you who are telling me why grüne and bunt have an E on above, so here, and that is because we have got plural, because it's more than one. It was two green triangles, and because it's plural, we're adding an E on the end, okay, and vier bunte oval, and you can see here we've got E's on the end as well, which help us to remember that, and that was my extra challenge, which some of you did there. So just as a quick recap on that next screen, remember the names, die Formen, the shapes. So das Dreieck, the triangle, das Rechteck, the rectangle, das Oval, the oval, der Kreis, circle, das Quadrat, the square. And if we remember talking about genders, das, and das, so they're all neuter, they're not masculine or feminine, they're das, and the only one which is masculine is der Kreis, which is the circle. And do you remember what I said last week about how I remembered der Kreis? It's from The Lion King, der Ewigene Kreis, the circle of life. That's how I always remember that one. And lots of them have got clues in their names as to how to remember them. So quad, I always think of being a quad, meaning 4, and drei has got the word 3 in it, so remembering the 3 corners, and that's where the ek comes from as well. So last week we went in to talk about the artist Franz Marc and his picture, das Bild, the picture of Zwei Schweine, 2 pigs. A very simple picture, but a very unusual picture as well. And remember, a question I asked you last week was, magst du das Bild? Do you like the picture? What was your thoughts about it? And we were talking about that last week. Ja, es ist schön. It is nice, or nein, es ist langweilig. It is boring. And we were using some of those phrases, and we'll come on to those. And then we were particularly thinking about welche Farbe ist das? So in the picture, in das Bild, welche Farbe ist das? Das ist schwarz. Welche Farbe ist das? Das ist grün. Ist das dunkelgrün oder ist es hellgrün? Und es ist hellgrün. Welche Farbe ist das? Das ist orange. Welche Farbe ist das? Das ist gelb. Yeah. So last week we're thinking about that, and just as a bit of a recap for some of those questions we had with magst du das Bild. Do you like the picture? Ja, ich mag das Bild. Yes, I like the picture. Das Bild ist schön. Yeah, it's nice. Das Bild ist bunt. Picture is colourful. Das Bild ist interessant. The picture is interesting. Or you might say nein. Ich mag das Bild nicht. No, I don't like the picture. And I think I remember saying to you, just remember the word order here. Nein, ich mag, I like, das Bild, the picture, not. Okay. Das Bild ist zu bunt. The picture is too colourful. Oder das Bild ist langweilig. Okay, the picture is boring. So we're going to be thinking about those, and we're going to be using those for our writing next week. So just before we carry on, I'm going to stop sharing this screen here, and I'm going to take you back to our knowledge organizer that we had last week as well. So I think it should be here. Perfect. Okay, let me just make it a bit bigger for you as well. So the unit that we're looking at for our German is called Das Meisterwerk, the masterpiece, by the artist Franz Marc. Now, one thing we said we would do a little bit more of this week would just be to have a little bit more about him as a person and who was Franz Marc. Helpfully, I've put it in English and in German. So sometimes it's really nice in languages to be able to look at what the English is and look how that translates in German and see if there's anything you can kind of pick up as you go along. So the biography of Franz Marc, Biografie von Franz Marc. His name is obviously Franz Marc, and he was born, so geboren in auf Deutsch, he was born on the 8th of February 1880 in Munich in Germany, which is quite a big city in Munich. It's a really lovely city. I've been there as well, and would be really lovely to go and visit as well. Education, he studied in Munich when he lived there, when he was growing up, and his profession was an artist and a painter, and that's obviously what he became very famous for. His achievements was he was a member of the group called Der Blaue Reiter, which is the Blue Rider, and this was a group of artists in the German Expressionist movement. Now, I'm not going to go into that right now because that goes into another art lesson, but at the time that he was born and the time that he was painting, there was a type of work, a bit like if we think to your music you do, and you have certain genres. You might have jazz, you might have blues, and a bit like in art, there are certain types of art as well, and he belonged to this group of artists that was called German Expressionist, probably because there were slightly more unusual pictures, as is Zwei Schweine. Sadly, he died on the 4th of March 1916 in Verdun in France during the First World War, so he wasn't alive that long ago, still relatively modern, but as I say, sadly died during the First World War, and he actually wasn't that old either. So that's a little bit about him. Some of the phrases that we had here were shapes. We've already been through those, we know those, and remember, hell meaning light and dunkel meaning dark. And some other things that might be useful for words and phrases, I'm just going to say, vila means lots. You know, es gibt vila blauer oval. You know, there are lots of blue ovals, for example. Es sieht aus wie ein or einer. It looks like a. Zum Beispiel, for example, you might say that where my mouse is on the screen, es sieht aus wie eine Dreieck. Okay, it looks like a triangle. Well, it's probably not quite a triangle, but it looks a bit like a triangle. War and waren, was and were, quite helpful words to know in the past tense. Geboren means born, gestorben, died. Die Ausbildung is the education. Der Beruf, the profession, so his profession, and der Verdienst, the achievement. So they're words that you can see up here as well in his autobiography, not in his autobiography, in his biography. And other words that you might need to know, schattiert means shaded, and der Hintergrund is the background. And we'll think more about using those words as well in our next lesson, but it's also useful to think about that. So you might say something like welcher Oval ist schattiert grün, you know, which oval is shaded green, and if you were pointing, so that's quite helpful to know. And der Hintergrund, the background, okay, talking about the Hintergrund hat Vila Oval, the Rechtecker, Quadrat, zum Beispiel. Okay, for example, you know, in the background there are lots of ovals, rectangles, squares. So I'm just going to stop sharing that screen and I'm going to go back to our other task for today. So if I bring this back up, okay, you should be able to see that back on the screen. So here is my task for today. I would like you, however you can, to label the shapes and the animals in the painting with what shape or animal or colour they are. So you might be able to, if you type into Google and you type Zwei Schweine, or you type Franz Marc, and you might be able to bring up pictures of his work and you could find that picture fairly easily, as I have. And then those of you who are really confident on the computer could label it on the computer. You could print it out if you've got that facility, or if not, you don't need to do that. You could just write me some sentences is what I would like to see. Even though they're not necessarily labelled, you could describe the picture for me. And what I'm looking for today is sentences like Das Quadrat ist hellblue. So the rectangle is light blue. Das Rechteck ist hellschwarz. Das Rechteck ist hellschwarz will be light black. You could choose dunkel as well as another word. So I've put that in that vocab box that is just down here, dunkel and light. You've got the words for all of the shapes, and I've also just reminded you of the different colours here that you could use. There are some that aren't on here, such as orange. Some of them you can research, some of them I think you will already know. So what I want is some different sentences describing the different shapes that you have within the picture. Whether you can label them with an arrow is one thing, but if not, you could just write me maybe at least 3, 4, maybe 5 sentences that tell me about the different shapes in the picture and what colour they are, and if they're light or they are dark. And you could even extend that to the animal as well, because you could say die Schweine, the pigs, die Schweine sind, and then you could tell me what colours the pigs are, die Schweine sind. Okay, so there is my challenge, and that my extension is going to be to think about describing for me the pigs as well. How can you say that? But I want to see you using das Dreieck, das Rechteck, das Quadrat, das Oval, and der Kreis as well to describe, and see if you can find almost every single colour that you can manage to use in there and send those in. So I'm just going to come off and finish that screen. You can pause this screen when you're watching back so you can help, it can help you, and I'll just stop sharing it for now. So that's your task for today. I'd like you to be able to send that in for me. I'd love to be able to see those sentences. You're using that language, use what resources I've given you on the screen. You've got the words for the shapes, you've got the words for the colours, and you should be able to fit them all together with those sentence frames I gave you. So please do send those in when you can this week. Okay, Year 5, have a great afternoon, enjoy the rest of the day and week, and I will see you for next week's German lesson. Okay. Auf Wiedersehen, tschüss!